right, thanks for dropping by the garage today to talk about the Volkswagen Super Beetle. Part 2, a deep dive into the Super Beetle, continuing off where we left in the first video. And so here we are looking at a side-by-side comparison, and you can see that the trunk is, of course, wider on the Super Beetle on the right-hand side, as we previously discussed in the first video. However, this is a 71, and the 71 has one small change or one difference compared to the 72. It has smaller marker lights on top of the front fenders, and the 72's got the wider, bigger marker lights. So other than that, both cars were the flat or almost flat, slightly curved windshield cars. So that's how you can tell them apart. Here's a nice picture of a 72 Super Beetle, and you can see that the length is starting to grow and the weight is up to 1,918 pounds. It's also important to realize that the wheelbase was about half an inch longer in the front of the car to accommodate all that extra stuff that we talked about up front. So the car was getting more porky, bigger and heavier, which required more power. And the model designations in the Super Beetles were a bit funky, and also depending on what country you were in. That being said, for example, if you're an American in 1971, you got the Super Beetle, and the other Beetles were no longer available. And so, America, being a more affluential market, got the deluxe product, and also the 1600 version, the highest horsepower version, which we know as the Super Beetle. Other markets, like Canada and less affluential markets, got the Super Beetle and the normal Beetle side by side. So that's why you see a lot of pictures in these videos and online of Super Beetles next to or being compared to standard Beetles of the same model year. The other thing was that other markets got a lesser horsepower version, 1300cc dual port variant, and they started with that in the other countries. So they named the new Beetle the 1302, and then later on the 1303. So the 1302 designated a 1300 new style McPherson strut Beetle, okay, for model years 71 and 72. And the 1303 designation designated the new style Beetle with the 1300cc engine from 73 onward. Okay, and then the 1302S was the Super Beetle that, we all know, with the 1600cc engine, and up to 72, so 71 and 72. And the 1303S model, of course, was this Super Beetle with a 1600cc engine from 73 onward. So it's a little confusing, and in some markets they called the later the 1600S. So, picking up on the engine displacement of 1600 and using the description as a 1600S, for S stands for Super Beetle. Some Super Beetles had the grille under the front bumper. This was for a condenser for the rare and available air-conditioned models. Starting in 1973, Super Beetles had a seatbelt interlock system with pressure-sensitive seat cushions that had a sensor and a seatbelt latch check. This was something that went into the ID4 and ID Buzz, so it's a very innovative design that's still used today. 1975 brought about the introduction of fuel injection to the Beetle, and fuel injection stayed with the car until the end of production in 1980. It's interesting to note that the fuel injection was a Bosch L Jetronic, which was the predecessor to the 911 3.2-liter Carrera Motronic LH Jetronic system. It was also used on the Porsche 944. So it was a pretty advanced system for its day. That system pretty much replaced continuous injection system in most all the modern cars. Used a version of it with a computer and the mass airflow flapper valve system. So it was quite advanced for its time. And it even included a diagnostic port from 1972 on in the Super Beetle cars. Well, let's kick the tires and take it out on a road test. Here's the 1 gauge dashboard with some additional instruments added. I did drive the Super Beetle. My friend had one, and I did some troubleshooting on it. At the same time, I owned a Porsche 924, an early model, and it surprised me how the Super Beetle was very comparable to the 924 in terms of ride and handling. His was a Carmen Cabriolet, and it had a really nice ride, very soft and less bumpy, let's say, than the earlier Beetle. Very similar to my 924. The 924 basically had Super Beetle suspension and geometry. The back of the 924 was basically all a Super Beetle rear axle assembly. And the front of the car was Rabbit in the 924, which wasn't that far off of the evolution from the Super Beetle. The later Super Beetles with the rack and pinion were very similar to the Rabbit suspension. So it had very similar characteristics as a 924. The 924 that I had was carbureted, switched over to carbs, and it was a 2 liter, so it was a little bit more powerful. And my friend's Super Beetle was carbureted and also stock, so it was you know a bit slower for sure. And the 924, of course, with the better weight distribution, being a pretty well balanced car, of course, handled sharper and was quicker all around than the Super Beetle. But still, the Super Beetle was a lively performer and fun to drive. So I really enjoyed it. It was a great car, and I miss driving it. If I my Beetle, of course, is not a Super Beetle. I have a '69, so um, yeah, I do like the Super Beetle, and I would consider getting one. I'm always looking around for options, and that's one car that I do love. It's interesting to note that the 924 and the Super Beetle have the same wheelbase. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give us a like and subscribe. It's getting late, so I think I'm going to keep the engine portion, 1600 dual port, for another video discussion on that engine, the engine that powers a Super Beetle. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great long weekend.